Good afternoon and welcome to another exciting video in the Artful Coder series on PHP. Now this is going to be a short video explaining about name types and cast typing. So what does that mean? Well, name types in PHP has been for a long time a non-type safe language, and in later versions have gone certain ways to make sure you can include types in your variables, which is a lot better. It doesn't work all over the place. It works in certain places. So unlike C plus, C sharp, you can set a car out, give it a variable name, and then do a new of that car. In PHP, you can't do that, but what you can do is you can give hints as to what you're supposed to be returning. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, what we're going to do, let's have a think. So we want to explain, so I've already put some types in here. This has to be a string. So for example, if I create a new file down here and call this name types.php, there you go. And we'll just borrow this. We'll just keep adding on here. And we'll just, no, don't ask Copilot, escape. So if I, for example, was to change this to a 1, what should happen is my named, it should throw a type exception because it is of the wrong type. So, ignore me there a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here and do named types. So let's just go there and do named types.php. Okay, so it thinks it's okay, that hasn't worked as expected. So for some reason it's still accepted it. It's tried to interpret it as a string. So why is that? So let's just have a look. That's created that. Okay. That doesn't throw an exception, which is what I thought, or an error, which is what I kind of thought it would do, because what beat my horn driving, yeah. So that hasn't done that. That's a bit battery because what you want is really is in your car is Ford. It's a kind of throw an exception on that, but it doesn't. So let's try it a different way. If constructors don't support that, let's try it as a method. So let's just say public function am I a Ford string. Let's just say that. Let's say we're going to return a bool. Okay. So let's show what happens here. So what we're going to say if $this make, if $this make, $this make equals afford. Then we'll just say very simple here. We're going to say return true. We're slightly going to break our coding convention here intentionally. So let's see what happens if we return 1. Now, does that get interpreted as a Boolean? This is going to be interesting. So then what we're going to do is come back to our name types and we're just going to scrap that. We're going to say dollar is Ford. Ford equals that. Let's just see what we get. Okay. Okay, so it's not doing anything, and then if we just do echo is Ford, and if we just refresh that, 1. Okay, so let's go back to a car. 1 is true, yeah. So let's just change this to 12 or something like that. So now, if I go back over to my name types and I change that to a 1 in there, what should happen is what I'm hoping. Nothing. It still handles it. So this isn't strictly. It's got nothing there, but it's not. I tell you what. Let's go into our car and see if it's not throwing that exception there, which is what I would expect it to do. I'd expect it to say, expecting that, else return that. So obviously it's not doing it as a Ford. It's just not returning anything. So let's change this and let's put it in an exception. Because what I want it to do is I want to say here, I want to see what we get. So exception, catch, exception, $E, and just to our logger, we're going to borrow this in there. I want to see if it throws up an exception. So let's have a look. So let's just have the message. I'm not interested in what that is. Let's have a look. Nothing's thrown, which is very strange because this dot make. I'm just going to put an echo statement in. Let's just branch this out. I want to see if it's even getting into this bit to start off with. Just want to do that and say echo here. Yes, we could use a logger, but I just want to see that. Okay. So it is detecting it as a number, but that isn't doing as it should do. Because what should happen is when we do a return statement, it should say that it causes a problem because 12 is nothing. But what happens if we do it as a string? Let's have a look at this. Nothing. So that is not throwing any errors if it's the wrong return type, which is strange, but that is how it's handled. And this is very confusing because it's definitely getting into that bit in name types. If we change that back to here, do that and refresh it, that hasn't errored or anything like that, which is good. So we know that we've got a 1 there because it's true, but it's not thrown that back. It just doesn't handle it. So it's very confusing of how that actually works because the whole point is with these name types are supposed to respect that. But the way PHP works, it tries to interpret certain stuff. So it may well say, well, 1 is automatically converted to a string. Yeah, but the other one I talk about is let's have a look. So what you can do is let's create a new file in here called, let's call this car status. Okay. Equals um, car status. This could be anything you want it to be. And we're just going to have private string. Let's have a ball. Dollar valid. Private string error. And we'll just do that if it's valid, if there's any errors. That's all we're going to have there. And we need to make sure we include that in our named types file. So let's put it below here and we'll go with car status. There you go. So that's all it's going to have, and we'll have a constructor as well, which is when we create such an object, or we have getters and setters. So let's structure this out. So public function double underscore construct, and let's say we say bool valid string error, and that's what we're going to do there. I'm going to say dollar this valid equals valid, and I'm going to say dollar this dash error equals dollar error, and we're just going to have something like public function set valid. No, let's do get. Let's do, yeah, we'll set it because I want to show you something here. So set valid equals bool dollar valid, and it's just going to be simple setter. And this is what you do. You have the concept of getters and setters in object orientation. So what we do is do public function set error string dollar error. Okay, right. And we'll have one more function, which is called print function, public function status return. Let's have return. Let's say get car status. What we're going to say is we're going to say return valid equals dollar this valid dollar error equals this dash error. Just refresh that. Let's see if we get any errors. Nothing. So what we've got there is a simple car status class. We'll get into more on that. So what we want to do is we just want to say the status of the car. So let's create another function called, what we're going to do, what are we looking to do? Are we looking to return, we're looking for a data type. So let's say public function get car status. And this is going to return a car status. Let's just say that. And what should happen is a little error. Nothing. So if we then to say here, go into our name types, and we say here, get car, let's just do car status equals to car. So what's going to happen? Okay. So the strange thing is, this is where it gets interesting. So what we can see from here is when you're returning objects, so when you return custom objects, not intrinsic data types, but custom objects, it will throw the type error up because we're expecting a type of get car status. So when you have a function that you simply must have a bool, it kind of ignores it. Very confusing, or it just doesn't give you what is there. It just says throws it may be a hidden exception. So how can we fix this function here? Well, we could either go with a long haul declaration, or we could say, which is it clever here. Let's do it clever. So let's have valid equals false and error equals, just do that. And what we want to do is we want to create a brand new car status equals new car status, and we'll just pass in some, or we'll just leave that as it is, and then we'll say return car status. What will that do now? Okay, so it needs a constructor. So what we'll do is just say that, and we'll do that, and we'll have a bool which will just say false. And what should happen now, there you go, we satisfied the semantics on it and syntax. So it's a very simple way of returning a car status, and you can see that it's satisfied because we're returning an object given type. This method up here didn't work as expected, because what I'd expect is a similar message here. If I just take that return statement out, you can't expect it saying it should be a bool, not that. That's kind of throwing me a bit on that. So type names named types is sort of works in PHP and sort of doesn't. If you're working with objects, fantastic, will sort of work. If you're expecting to have a hint that it's car status, brilliant. But intrinsic types doesn't seem to work the same way. It may be that if we come up here and say valid, let's give this a go, see if you have to do it this way, equals false. Let's say 1, let's say 13, and all we'll say here is just copy this into here, valid equals true, and valid, we don't need that because we're just doing that. What would happen, and we're not returning, and now we'll return down here. This is another way you can do it and do that. So if we go back to our name types and see what happens now, nothing. So that is a bit in .NET. So if you, I also do C# and a bit of Java as well. And in there, it's very strict on what you return. But in PHP, it will try and interpret 13 as a Boolean anyway. So what about if I'll tell you what, let's change this. Let's do it as a string and no, because it'll try and, yeah. I'm not going to go our route, but yeah, have a play about yourself. But it appears to be that objects are strongly typed. You have to satisfy that, else it throws an error. But Booleans, intrinsic types, PHP tries to do what it can do to make sense of those variables, because it isn't in its nature a strongly named type language. You can have as I've explained in our previous videos, you can have it as a number 1 minute, you can have it as a string, you can have it as a float. Yeah, so it's not a name type language, but there are things you can do to force values across, and we'll talk about that in API when we look at API coding, because I've come around a good way with Terrini operators to basically, if you want to check for a number so people can't inject code into your numbers, so you don't then just try and run that against the database and cause all sorts of problems. So yes, you've got binary parameters, but it's good that if you know you want a number, yes, it does it automatically in the scenes, but it's better to say that if you somebody passes a string up accidentally and you want a number, there's ways you can handle that, and the same with other types as well. So, and I think the only other thing I was going to show you is, can you cast something as a different type of object? Well, yes, you can. You could say here, you could say, what happens if we do that? Let's go back. That should just allow us. Yeah, so you can't change. So that is casting. So what this is saying, let's take it off this and let's just say int is Ford. And let's just give that a go and see what happens. Nothing. So it seems to be that named types, because come back with nothing. So this is not what we're expecting. Seems to only work, the logic only seems to work with classes, object types, and not variables down here. Like if you just return simple intrinsic type, doesn't work. So sorry for waffling on, but I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope it makes name types a bit more kind of understanding.